The Centers for Disease Control reported that the 5 things that kill 2/3 of Americans are heart disease, cancer, lung disease, stroke, and unintentional injuries, such as car accidents and drug overdoses. We sit up and take notice at announcements such as these, because we don't want anything bad to befall our bodies. But what about our souls? The early church fathers named 7 deadly sins that kill our souls, and the number 1 preventable deadly sin is pride. Pride is about playing God. Its symptoms include demanding too much of ourselves and others, judging too quickly or harshly, overly concerned about our appearance or talents, having to be at first or at the center, bragging or exaggerating, and being in control of all situations. St. Vincent de Paul said, "Pride is your worst enemy, the root of all that is evil, and the failure of all that is good." The virtue that overcomes pride is humility. Humility includes knowing the truth about reality, a reduction of our ego, a dependence on God, and a knowledge of self. The first prescription to battle pride with humility is to know the truth of reality. Now, in modern language, pride rings out in TV programs such as Mythbusters, when we hear, "I reject your reality, and I substitute my own." What reality are we ignoring, or worse, replacing? Our reason for existence, and where our self-worth comes from. The most important spiritual truth, and the hardest reality to hear, is that God does not need us. God, by definition, is complete in himself. He is eternal, all-knowing, and all-present. Yet strangely, here we are. Therefore, God has loved us into existence. But why? He wants to share something with us, his divine life. Hence, he sent his Son. If God doesn't need us, but truly wants us, then we can take a deep breath and relax, because our self-worth comes not from what we do or don't do, but from God. St. John Paul II wrote, "We are not the sum of our weaknesses and failures. We are the sum of the Father's love for us, and our real capacity to become the image of his Son, Jesus." When we forget where our self-worth comes from, we get afraid, and we resort to defining ourselves through pride, manifesting itself in competition, material things, honor, and power. The second prescription to battle pride is a reduction of our ego. St. John the Baptist said it well, "He must increase, and I must decrease." In our gospel, Jesus spoke of how the ego makes us want to jockey for position. Yet earlier in Luke's gospel, Jesus called his disciples to a childlike humility. We hear, an argument arose among the disciples about which of them was the greatest. Jesus took a child and placed it by his side and said to them, "The one who is least among all of you is the one who is the greatest." The first reading confirms this. "My child, conduct your affairs with humility. Humble yourself, and you will find favor with God." God defined humility when he told St. Catherine of Siena in prayer, "I am, and you are not." In other words, God is God and we are not. Bishop Robert Barron said that instead of allowing God to be the director and audience in the great play that we call life, we take over as the director and audience, and our pride always applauds what we choose to do. The third prescription to battle pride is a dependence on God. This is why Jesus placed a child in the midst of the disciples as an example of utter dependence. One of the best examples of childlike dependence was a saint, Therese of Lisieux. She said, "How happy I am to realize that I am little and weak. How happy I am to see myself so imperfect. To remain little before God, we must recognize our nothingness. Expect all things from the good God, just as a little child expects all things from his father." The final prescription to battle pride is a knowledge of self. This begins by eliminating the false image we project and believe about ourselves. If we do not have a clear image of who we are, then we cannot know God. St. Augustine used to pray, "Lord, may I know myself, and may I know you." In fact, St. Augustine's greatness came from recognizing his sinful past and allowing God to build him back up again. This is what St. Paul meant when he said, "When I am weak, then I am strong." St. Paul helped topple that wall of pride when he wrote to the Galatian church, "If anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he is deluding himself." Please note that this has nothing to do with low self-esteem, but rather in prayer we are asking God to reveal how we appear in his eyes. We will never allow Jesus, the divine physician, to heal what we don't know is diseased. Our greatest example of humility in the Bible is Mary. St. Mary's humble prayer, the Magnificat, goes like this: "My soul proclaims the greatness of the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God my Savior, for he has looked with favor on his lowly servant. From this day all generations will call me blessed. The Almighty has done great things for me." It was not what Mary did that made her great. It is what God chose to do through her. Humility prevents the number one cause of death for souls, and it is our ticket to heaven. For St. Elizabeth Ann Seton said, "The gate of heaven is very low. Only the humble can enter it."